All right, so we have people both from Europe, Asia, North America, and South America. So that's really amazing. We are from all over the world today. And we both have green coffee buyers, coffee roasters, bar managers, baristas, and other professions. And some of you have taken roasting courses and also sensory courses, but most of you haven't. And yeah, there are people with both a little experience and a lot of experience. But yeah, really welcome to all of you. It's just nice for me to get a feeling of you being on the other side. I guess you will be able to see the results now as well. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we have also one from Australia. I forgot to put the Oceania. I'm sorry about that. Nice that you mentioned it. I will remember next time. Super. All right. All right, but welcome to this webinar. It's the same webinar as I was holding at World of Coffee in Athens. So we just wanted to give you the opportunity to hear it here today as well, if you didn't have the option to join in Athens. So today is a webinar, and as you can see, I'm trying to look at the chat and the questionnaire, and I'll do my best to see if you're writing something there, but I will also be focused on presenting. So if you have any questions, write it there, and then when I finish, I will have a look and go through all of them. So you are more than welcome to ask any question that you like. Yes. So my name is Steen. I'm the sensory scientist of CoffeeMind, and I'm in CoffeeMind together with Morten Mønshav, who is in charge of the coffee roasting and teaching also coffee roasting. And in general, CoffeeMind is doing education, consultancy, and research. I'm an industrial Ph.D. Candidate, and we are having a close collaboration with Copenhagen University. And actually, through all the years, we have had this option to also having students helping us to do projects, which has been really nice also during our teaching, because every time we had a question, we could always find a student to help us to investigate it. And we are located in Copenhagen, Denmark. Just put it on the map of Europe here. And just a small picture of our facilities. This is our playground. I think we have almost maybe 9 different coffee roasters. So it's a fun place to teach both roasting and sensory. And yeah, CoffeeMind started in 2007, created by Morten Mønshav. And yeah, he roasted coffee in the beginning and was teaching the SCA roasting courses. And then I was lucky to meet him in 2014. I studied sensory science at the University of Copenhagen, and he asked me if I could be one of these students to do a project. So I did a project on where I investigated how the serving temperature of coffee, how it influenced both the aroma release and our perception of it. So that was really interesting, and I was lucky to get employed afterwards. And in 2016, I started this industrial PhD project where we wanted to investigate how we can become better coffee tasters. And it has been going on for many years now. I've been on maternity leaves 2 times during this period, and we had Corona, so there's been many challenging things during the time. But now we are finally in a place where we are finalizing it, and we have developed this sensory training kit after all the research. And yeah, since 2007, CoffeeMind has taught more than 2,000 individuals, both coffee roasting and sensory. We have consulted a lot of roasteries worldwide. We have initiated more than 30 scientific research projects, whereof I think now it's actually 12 that has been published as scientific papers. And then we have also written these 3 learning books, because we know that there's actually not so many people that want to read these scientific papers, even though it's interesting. Sometimes it's written in a little boring language. So we really wanted to make it more accessible to everyone, and that's why we also wrote these easy to read, more fun books. Yes, then we have developed our flavor wheel. Maybe you have seen it. If you stick to the end, I will share a QR code so you can get the PDF of the flavor wheel for free. Yeah. And we have also developed our smell and tell aroma memory game. So in general, we're really working on making sensory and roasting, the training of that, really fun and and easy for people to participate in. Yes. So the agenda for the next hour or so is that I would like to tell you about this research project that I'm doing for almost the last 9 years almost. I will touch upon why we haven't included descriptors as clean cup and acids in the training program that we have developed. Then we will look at 2 of my research projects, the one that shows the effect of online sensory training, and we have developed a rapid sensory cupping technique that I would also like to show you. And then we will end up with the Q&A. Yes. So as a start, I would like to tell you the way we got the idea to the project. So it was actually the very first thing I did at CoffeeMind was a big project for a big company. So it was really important for us to do it good and do it well. And we had the plan to use the sensory panel of Copenhagen University, but unfortunately they were not available during the time that we needed them. So we quickly had to come up with another solution. And then we decided to invite coffee professionals to help us out to be the sensory panel, because we thought, okay, they also experienced the coffee. It was a project on coffee, so this should work. But we had to take them through what we call a sensory screening test, because we needed to be sure that they were skilled or good enough to actually help us evaluate coffee. And then unfortunately, they actually, or many of them failed this screening test that we put them through. And then we were like, okay, what do we do? Are they just doomed to not be good enough? Because that's how it usually is. If you try to take to be a part of the panel at university, if you're not good enough, then that's it, and then you're just not a part of it. But we really wanted to help them, and we wanted them to become better. So that's how we got the whole idea of developing this training program, to take them from where they were and then train them so they could be good enough to actually be a part of our sensory panel. So that's how it all started. And then, of course, we needed to figure out what descriptors should we include in a training kit like this. Like for me, coming from a university background, there were many descriptors used in the coffee industry that was not so clear to me, or I didn't really understand where they came from or how they were used. For example, descriptors as clean cup and also the acids in coffee. I was teaching the SCA sensory courses, and I was also a part of the sensory creators groups for some years when I first started. And by teaching the professional course, I had to take people through this exam where they had to identify 4 different acids. And I just saw that it was really difficult for them to do so. And when I wanted to tell them the theoretical background for why they had to do it, I couldn't find any explanation for that. So we thought to start an investigation and find out, is it relevant, and why is it relevant to include it? Because we were really lacking this explanation for why are you saying that something tastes like malic acid, tartaric acid, or so on. And then I was also wondering, when I looked at the different educational systems in the coffee industry, we saw that CQI were using some acids, SCA other, and then when they developed the newer flavor wheel, they were also included like citric malic and butyric and its valeric acid. So I felt that there were a little confusion going on in the choice of different acids in the coffee industry. Yeah, so that's why we started this investigation. We have actually also had a webinar exactly on this subject. So if you're interested in going deeper into it, you can watch that afterwards. So for now, I'll just briefly explain what we did and the results. Yeah, so we did both some chemical analysis and sensory analysis. So we measured TDS, pH, and we did some chromatographic analysis of the organic acids, chlorogenic acids, and also sugars. And then we did 2 sensory tests, a detection threshold and an identification test. And we chose a quite broad varieties of coffee. We took Brazilian, 2 different coffees from Brazil, Bolivia, 1 from Bolivia and 2 from Kenya. So, and yeah, the Brazilians were pulp naturals and the others were washed. And then we roasted them to 3 different roast degrees. So we we thought that we had quite a broad variety of coffees. Of course, we haven't covered everything, but at least we believe that these should be different in their acid profile. Okay. Yeah, and then what you see here was really interesting. You can see we have the different colored lines are the different coffees, and then the light, medium, darker roast. And these two, the chlorogenic acid and the citric acid, we saw a significant difference between the samples. But for all the other acids, there was no significant difference between the different origins. So already here, we actually felt that we had evidence enough for not really included in the training program. But we just wanted to go a step further and also test it with some sensory analysis. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, what was also interesting, even though here in the citric acid, we saw the significant difference between the samples, what was surprising was that it was actually the Brazilian coffee that contained the most citric and the Kenyan the least. And that was quite opposite of what we expected. I guess most of us would perceive a Kenyan coffee as more acidic than a Brazil. So there are some other compounds influencing the way we perceive it. Again, emphasizing that it might not be so relevant to actually say that it tastes like malic, lactic, citric, or so on. Yes. Then for the sensory test, we decided to do a detection threshold and an identification test. And the detection threshold is a test where you test at what point are people able to say that it tastes sour. So they didn't have to identify it, but only say, is it water or is it actually sour? So it's like a really, really low level of intensity. And identification test is when they have to name the acid. Yes, so the way you do it is that you start with a very low concentration and then you increase the concentration of acid, and then the participants have to tell you at what point are they able to say that now it tastes like something. And here we saw that the detection threshold was only lower than the average concentration for citric acid and phosphoric acid. So it means that for acidic, lactic, and malic, they could not, like the average concentration in the coffee was lower than the time where they could actually taste something. So based on this, it seemed that it's only citric acid that we can actually detect in these coffees that we investigated. Yeah, so if we put the lines here, the black line is the average concentration found in the coffee, and then the red dotted line is the detection threshold. So you can see for citric acid, we are able to taste it, but for the rest, it's either very, very close or the average concentration is way below the detection threshold. Yes, then we also wanted to see, are people able to actually identify these acids? And we went to a coffee collective and had all their bar managers helping us out. So it was 12 bar managers. So it's people that have all chosen to dedicate their life to coffee. Sorry, I'm a little bit thrown in my throat. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so it's people that have all dedicated their life to coffee, and they are also used to train, and they are also training on these citric acids as a part of their job. And surprisingly, none of them were able to detect the acids in coffee, and in water it was only the acidic acid that they could identify significantly, and that's the only acid that has that's volatile, so it's the only one that has a smell. So that's probably the reason why it was possible with that one in water. And here we had added the average concentration to the coffee, so we were actually making the amount of acids in the coffee twice as high as it is naturally. So it was quite surprising to us that they were not able to detect it. Yeah, and therefore we concluded that we could not include acids in a sensory training program as the one we were about to develop it. Then we also looked at the clean cup, and to our surprise, we saw that it was quite subjective how people were using clean cup. I think many of us will say that, okay, it's defect or not, but somehow many people also saw that you could actually score clean cup on an intensity scale. So we also thought that this was still a little bit too fluffy to be included. So that's also excluded from the sensory training. Yeah. So what we wanted to do was to develop a training program that was not an exam at all, but more just a training where we took the participants from where they were and trained them to become better. Because we felt that many of the trainings that were offered in the coffee industry was focusing more on the exam and had to be extremely difficult. Yeah, so we wanted to take people more by the hand and help them improve. And we were lucky to have my two supervisors on board on this project. We have Professor in Sensory Science, Linda Brady, helping us developing the whole sensory part of the program. And then we also have neuroscientist Troels Kjær as a part of it, because we actually also wanted to investigate if by adding some cognitive training to the program, if it could also help us improve our coffee tasting skills. Because our hypothesis was that, like, when we are tasting coffee, we need also to use our memory. We need to stay extremely concentrated and focused. So why not also train some of those skills to improve? And we started out with an extremely difficult or complicated setup. People had to come in 3 times to get tested. They were getting tested on day 1. Then they went home and trained for 6 weeks, 5-10 minutes daily. They came back and got tested again, and then they continued training for 6 more weeks and came back. And the reason why I'm saying it was complicated is that we had people coming from at least most of Europe, but also from further away. So they had to fly in to Copenhagen all 3 times, and you can see that you have to be really dedicated to this. But we were lucky to have people on board that were that. Yeah, but in the end, 44 professionals finalized these 12 weeks of training, where one group took and started with what we call an active control period, and then they had the intervention training, and then we had the opposite for the intervention group. So we did a crossover program. And the control group, I gave them one big exercise per week that I actually thought was quite helpful also for improving your sensory skills. You can see them here. It was, for example, to set up some triangle tests or use a flavor wheel for aroma detection and so on. Yeah, and then the intervention group, they started out with an order training. We gave them a small sensory kit where they actually had an order to identify. And then the rest of the tasks were different cognitive tasks, like concentration exercises, memory, and actually also math. Yes, so yeah, this is how it looked like. You will get this small microtube and being asked, what do you smell? And then the next task would be a squared breathing exercise where the aroma that was in the tube is displayed as a picture. So this one was strawberry. And then the participants were asked to do this breathing exercise where they would inhale while counting to 5, hold their breath, and exhale and hold their breath. So the idea was that they were getting mentally ready for the whole training. And then as an extra add-on, they had to imagine the aroma that they were smelling every time they were breathing in. And that is based on some previous research where some researchers found out that you can actually improve your ability to identify aromas just by imagining that you smell it. So that's an easy way of training without any equipment. Yeah, and then one of the concentration exercises would be a picture like this. So here they would be asked to look at this picture for 1 minute, and then there would be some questions afterwards to see how much they were concentrated on looking at it. So you can let's just take 20 seconds, so you can have a look at it to see how much you. Yes, and then I will ask you 3 questions. So did the man write with his left or right hand? Don't know if you noticed. And the girl in the front of the picture had a ponytail. What was the color of her hairband? And how many apples were seen in the picture? Yes, so the hairband was blue. He's writing with his left hand, and we have 4 apples. So it was like really exercises like this that they were going through on a daily basis. And here you see the results. So in the test, we were testing their ability to recognize aromas. And you can see here at from test 1 to test 2, here they had the control training. So just my ideas for weekly training exercises. And they became a little bit better, but not significant. And then from test 2 to test 3, they were doing this aroma identification and all the cognitive training, and then we saw a huge improvement. That was also significant. Yeah, and then we saw the same from the intervention group. So these started with the intervention, and we saw the improvement from that, and they were able to keep the level, but they did not become significantly better from test 2 to test 3. So there's something here that looks like it's better to have this daily training than a weekly training exercise. Yes, and yeah, we did 2 interventions groups just to test if we could repeat what we saw in this intervention. And as you see here, it was exactly the same pattern. Yeah, and the aromas that we used for the test were all the Linedo Cafe aromas. So it was also interesting for us to get a look into how good they are and which of the aromas that the participants were able to improve on and which of them were too difficult. So here you see all of those that they actually improved on. And you can see aromas as, for example, coffee pulp, toast, and roasted peanuts. It was very difficult at test 1, but at test 3, they got more than 50% had them correct. So it was possible to improve those aromas. And it makes sense that when you come and test day 1 and you have never smelled coffee pulp before, of course, it's very difficult to identify, but then you can learn how it smelled by being exposed to it. And the same with, for example, tea rose, red currant jelly. I would say black currant is still quite low even after the training. So maybe this aroma in itself could be improved to be even more clear that it's black currant. Then here we have all the aromas that we did not see any improvement on. For example, we have lemon. Everyone had it correct at test 1, so of course we could not measure any improvement there. Oh, sorry. And then we have roasted coffee and medicinal. Only 30%, around 30% had it correct at test 3. So here my feedback to Linné would be to maybe take them out or improve them. I don't think that it's not such a good sign that so few people can actually get it correct, especially like the aroma of roasted coffee. We are working with coffee. It should be better in my opinion. Yes, but all these percentages are included in the final score. So if you didn't find the percentages that high, it's because these are also included in the average improvement. Yeah, then we send out a questionnaire afterwards, and in general, the participants found that the sensory performance scores improved their ability to stay concentrated, to pay attention, and also improve their memory. And it also improved their sensory skills. So we were, of course, really happy to hear that. I was a little bit afraid to send out this cognitive training program because people were signing up for sensory training, like who wants to do math if you're expecting to taste and smell something. But we actually got really positive feedback on that, especially because people really felt that they improved also their cognitive skills. Yeah, and then in general, it lived up to the people's expectations. It made them aware of their strengths and weaknesses when tasting and smelling. They got more self-confidence when tasting coffee. And in general, they felt that it was a good value for their personal sensory development. Yeah, so because this setup was quite big, we had these 3 test times with 6 weeks of training in between. We decided to do another test a little bit more simple, because in this first program we saw that training works, and the sensory training together with the cognitive training had an effect, and it was also possible to do it online. But we were not able to see or to say exactly that it was a cognitive training or how big the effect of that was. So that's what we wanted to investigate as the second research project, but we had to do it more simple because we also wanted to have more participants. So here in the next round, they had to only come 2 times. So they came test 1, then they trained for only 4 weeks, because we also saw that after 4 weeks, it was difficult for people to continue. Like everyone almost completed the 4 weeks, and then the 2 last, it was really dropping down how many were doing this daily training. So it makes more sense to say like, okay, we take 4 concentrated weeks. That's something that we can all overlook to do. Yeah, and then these 2 tests. So you can see here, this time we managed to have 109 coffee professionals completing the program, where we had a control group that just did sensory training, and an intervention group that did exactly the same sensory training and then cognitive training on top. And then this time we wanted to focus on coffee tasting, and we developed this rapid sensory profiling method that we wanted to use as a test. So we wanted to see if this training program could also have an effect on our ability to evaluate coffee. Yes. So the rapid sensory profiling, it's actually just a quicker way of doing traditional sensory profiling. That's something that in a university setting, it will often take maybe 1-2 weeks to do that. You spend maybe 1 week in the training group and 1 week actually evaluating it. And it's not really possible in a busy work life setting. So that's why we wanted to do kind of the same, just much quicker. Yeah, so how can we do a sensory evaluation objectively? There are many different methods doing that, and there are both some, as I just said, very extensive method, and there are quicker methods being developed for the industry. And yeah, sometimes I get questions, how can you do it subjectively? And there I usually compare it to a hearing test. Like you get this clicking sound and you have to say yes every time you hear something. It's actually very similar to do a sensory analysis. The only difference is that, like, if we all smell the same coffee, a signal is sent to our brain, and then the response that we get is really depending on how each individual understands the perception of that coffee. So that means that we need training to be calibrated and aligned on how to describe the coffee. So for example, here, if I were asking 3 people to judge the intensity of this coffee, one might say that it's very acidic, one would say that it's low, and one would be like somewhere in between. And the reason for that can, of course, be like how sensitive are they to, instance, acidity. They can lack training, but it can also be a different reference for acidity. If you're used to drinking very light or very dark roasted coffee, it can all influence how we would put the line on this scale. And therefore, it's so important that we started out with a training session, so we could all agree that, okay, this coffee, the sensation that we get from that, we should perceive it here on the scale. And we chose to work with the overall flavor categories, again, because we didn't have more time, or we wanted to do it fast. So we took the basic taste, acidic, sweet, and bitter. And then the retronasal aromas. So we're not smelling the coffee, but while drinking the coffee, the aromas that we got up to our nose, retronasally. And there we chose to work with roasted nutty, chocolate, and fruity. And then for mouthfeel, we only included body. And all of the descriptors were going from not at all to a lot on this 15 centimeter line scale. And for this test, we decided to work with 4 different roast degrees, Acton 65, 75, 85, 95. So going from a very dark roast to a very light roast, because in that way we kind of had an expectation of how these coffees should taste different. And then what we did was that we served them in 3 replicates, 1, 2, 3, gave it a completely random number, all 3 of them, rolled a dice, and then we served it to these panelists. We had approximately 10, 12 people each time. And then each of these people had their completely random order on tasting these coffee samples 3 times 4 samples. So 12 samples on the same table. And then they were asked to evaluate it on these descriptors. And after that, we were able to give them some individual feedback on how they performed the coffee tasting. So you can see here we have 3 covers, one that is very skilled and one that is not as skilled or can still use more training. So what you see is that we have the descriptors here: acidic, bitter, sweet, fruity, nutty, chocolate, roasted, bin body. And then the red dotted line is the panel average, and these 3 dots are the 3 times this cover scored this coffee. So this person were able to score it more or less the same all 3 times. The nutty is the only one that's a little bit spread. So if I had to say something to this person, I would tell him to focus more on nutty. Yeah, and here's another one that's slightly more spread. Sweetness, quite difficult. And here it's many of the descriptors that are quite spread. So the goal is, of course, that the 3 times you taste the same coffee, that you score it as close to exactly the same every time. So that's something that we also wanted to train them on to become better at. And yeah, so that was both some individual feedback we will give them, and the results that you see here is more how they work together as a panel and how they describe the coffees. And that was also interesting for us to see, because we have all the descriptors, and for example, you see acidic here. The letters here indicate if the letters are different, it means that the coffees were significantly different. So for acidic and bitter, all the 4 roast profiles were perceived significantly different among the 110 participants. But when we look at all the other descriptors, then the 2 lightest roasts were not different. So yeah, both for nutty, chocolate, sweet, roasted, fruity, and body, they could not identify any difference between the 2 lightest roasts. And this corresponds actually really nicely with the Maillard reaction. That is, it's an exponential reaction, so it goes slow in the beginning and then it goes faster and faster. So it makes sense here. For example, nutty, you can see that they are all kind of exponential, that it goes faster the darker it is. And for Morten, this was interesting for his roasting teaching, because when you have to take the roasting course, you usually have to hit a specific target color. And I think he works with like ±2, ±1. But after this, my recommendation to him would be that at the darkest roast degrees, you can actually, it's okay with a quite big actor, yeah, but at the lighter it is, the more similar it becomes. So it should be even wider, the hit range, because you're not able to taste the difference between these 2 samples anyway. Yeah, but that was just a side note to the whole project here. Then, yeah, how do you measure performance when it comes to coffee tasting? And the traditional way is to looking at how well do the people discriminate between the samples? Were they able to taste the difference between these 4 samples? And also, are they able to repeat their own scores? Like, do they score the 3 replicates in the same way all 3 times? And what we saw was that for discrimination, It's good that should be the higher the better. So we saw at test 2 the discrimination became better, but we didn't see a significant difference, unfortunately. And for the discrimination, we saw a decrease. So that's very positive that they became better in repeating their own scores. And we saw that for all the descriptors. And then what was, of course, also interesting for us, so based on this, we could conclude that the training program works. They become better in definitely being more consistent in their own scores. But what is also really interesting for us was to look into how this effect of the cognitive training, if it had any effect. And here we saw this the mean square error and the interaction between the copy and the assessor. And basically what you should take from this plot is only that, like, the closer to the corner, the better. So we saw that there was a positive effect of the sensory and cognitive training. And it looks like that it's in the right direction compared to the sensory. So this is a baseline, only sensory training and sensory plus cognitive training. So we were happy to see that it's going in the right direction, but unfortunately it's not significant. And I think the reason is that it's extremely difficult to measure this little extra effect that you might get from the cognitive training, because both groups were already doing the sensory training, so they were both improving. And then, the next step would probably be to have people only do cognitive training and see if it has any effect at all. Yes. Yeah, so that was really quickly what I have been doing for the last years on this project. So I thought I would finish with giving you some tips and tricks on how to train yourself if you want to do that. So the first two things I always say is to really to pay attention to everything that you are smelling or tasting. And it's not only when you are cooking dinner, but also when you are on your bike, or like every time you smell something, don't think that it's just good or bad, but really try to put the word on what it is. Because I think that's something that we have never really learned as kids. I feel that it's really fun that small kids, you teach them very quickly, maybe when they're 1 or 2 years, you teach them to identify the different colors, but you don't really teach them to identify or detect different tastes or different smells. So that's something I really think that we should all focus more at. Yeah, and then of course also be exposed to as much as possible. I had a cooking teacher once that told me that every week I should buy something new in the supermarket and taste that and pay attention to it. And I think that was quite a good advice to be curious, to try new things, and again, put words on it. Yeah, and then for the coffee business, I would think that there are some things that we can improve or we can learn from sensory science. For example, these good practices like to do blind cupping. Luckily, I see most people doing that, but also to take some time in between cups. So don't go just too fast in between cups, because there will be a carryover effect. So the second cup you taste will be affected by the previous one. And that's also why I have written palate cleansers. It's always a good idea to take a sip of water in between samples. When we do research projects, we put on the big thing. So we would both put toast bread, milk, and lukewarm water in between each cup. Of course, that might be a little bit too much, but at least just remember to take a small break. And then randomize the samples, do this thing to put replicates to see if you can repeat your own scores. It's also fun. Yeah, and then I just also have to mention this the slurping technique. I think that sometimes people put too much attention on slurping and making it sound loud. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's so important to actually have air coming out of your nose when you taste coffee. You can try next time you eat a piece of chocolate, for example, have it in your mouth, and then just focus on every time you breathe out, you will be able to really feel or experience the aroma in your nose. So remember to breathe out even though you are slurping. Yeah, and then in general, just keep it simple, use a flavor wheel, cut away the nonsense, no reason to focus on the acids based on our research. in general, we always work with descriptors or descriptors that you can find a sample and taste it so you can calibrate on it. So, for example, if you say that a coffee is taste round, it can be very difficult to calibrate with a colleague on what do you mean with round. Whereas if you say a coffee tastes like honey, you can actually go and buy a sample of honey and smell it and agree, okay, that's what we mean with honey. So that's what I mean with fancy descriptions. Just keep it simple. Be sure that you can find a sample so you know what you're talking about. Yeah, and then it can be a nice idea to have your skills measured as a starting point, just so you know where are you now and what should you focus on to continue, and then train. And then I just remember consumer research. Like, we should of course train ourselves to be as good as we can, because we're all working with coffee and it's important that we can taste and evaluate our own coffees. But it's also very important to go and ask the consumers what do they like, because that's where it matters in the end, right? Yes. Yeah, and all this research ended up with me developing this training kit. So we have a huge training kit. It's an online e-learning program where we will send you a sensory training kit that contains 15 different specialty coffees, red-colored glasses, so you can cover any color differences. Nose clips if you want to focus only on the taste and not on the smell. There's an adaptation exercise where I illustrate why it's so important to take this recuperation time between samples. There's some blind coded spices, 24 Centone aroma samples. We chose to continue with the Centone because I think they have a bigger variety of fruits and nuts and so on. So I felt that it was more fun to include that in the program. And then there are also some chemicals for weekly basic taste exercises. You will get our cupping evaluation cards and our flavor wheels. And unfortunately, we will actually stop producing this training kits because we just have to realize that it's really a lot of work to put it all together. So if you are eager to train, it's actually the last chance to do so in August. We'll prepare the last round in the end of July. So let us know if you're interested. And I know that Morten has created a discount code. So if you are, there's a special discount for you. And also, if you would like to have the slides and the PDF of the flavor wheel, you can scan this code and then we will send it to you. And then there's an extra option of some discount for. It's something that we gave at World of Coffee, but we thought that you should also have the chance of getting it now that you attended today. Yes, so thank you so much for joining. It's I'm really honored that you would like to hear what I have been doing for the last years. I hope you found it interesting. And then we still have some time. If you have any questions, then feel free to ask in the Q&A. Yes, I have one from an anonymous attendee here. He is writing, or she is writing, "Hello, dear Ida. Often have problem with indicating the difference between aromas like roasted coffee and pipe tobacco. Do you have a method to exercise and find the difference?" Probably you are thinking about the Lune du Café aroma, I guess, because I know that those two are there. And I really understand that it is difficult. And as you saw, many people, or all the people we had through the program, actually found the roasted coffee very difficult. My best suggestion is to practice and then maybe actually go and find the real things instead. Find some pipe tobacco and roasted coffee and smell it and just train on it. And again, it's also two things that can be difficult, because if you have it really depends on the coffee, because if the coffee smells like pipe tobacco, then I understand that it can be a tricky, but my best idea would be to actually find pipe tobacco and some roasted coffee and smell it and really focus on the subtle differences. Okay, then Rani. Hi, Rani. Hello, Ida. Thank you for all you're doing. Always an inspiration. I'm still sorry. I'm still waiting for the SCA professional sensory. I know, Rani. The reason why we haven't like Rani has taken our sensory foundation and sensory intermediate courses, and he has been asking me for the professional. But so far, I have been a little bit reluctant with the professional because we are not really following the SCA protocol. And I felt, and for the professional level, you actually spent 3 days teaching that protocol that is so far from the way I would do it. So that's why I haven't put it in the calendar yet. But now SCA has released a new protocol, so maybe maybe the time is getting there. And by the way, if you're interested in the protocol, Morten and I will will have a webinar in 2 weeks where we will talk about the new SCA protocol and our opinion on why we don't find it so scientific. Or we would like to discuss how there's still room for improvement, even though it's a very big step that they have been taking. And Alan Lama, no question. Just want to say thank you very much. It was okay. I'm happy to hear that. Hello, Ida. Are you advised to make a tasting night or sensory training for a client to improve their sense? Yes. Now I don't know what kind of client you think. If it's a person that is going to buy your coffee, so I think it's always nice when you work with new customers or new clients that you start with a tasting training session, so you are sure that you speak the same language. I would actually even advise to prepare the basic taste as watery solutions, because I so often see that people mix sour and bitter, and also umami and salt without knowing. So if you have to discuss later on if your coffee is too bitter or too sour, it can just be really tricky if you're not sure that they understand what is sour, what's bitter, and so on. And also the understanding of the difference between taste, aroma, flavor, mouthfeel. I would really recommend that you start out by being aligned. And if you want to get more ideas or inspiration on how you can do that, I have an e-learning course called Sensory Basics that we sell for just 30 euros. So it's really easy to access. And that's some online e-learning course that you can take in, where I give a very nice, very easy introduction to sensory and how different things affect the flavor of coffee. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. Hi, Rate. And does a discount code apply to the sensory kit? And yes, it does. I believe that there's like 20% discount on it with the code. How to train with some complex taste and aromas of some desserts are mentioned sometimes. I hear creme brulee or fruits, which is not available in region as well. You mentioned in coffee packets feeling it difficult to sense it. I'm a home brewer and coffee enthusiast. Hi, Rohit. Thanks for your question. I think if they say creme brulee, you probably have to find out what they mean. Maybe it's the vanilla, or is it the caramel on the top? Like, maybe try to dig into what specific aroma they are thinking about. And then yes, like a kit, we use Sentune. They have aromas for all of them, so it's an easy way to really quickly smell a specific aroma. But I also really like to go out and find the natural ingredients. Maybe not the whole creme brulee, but the caramel or the vanilla can be useful. But yes, yeah, and then you say they mention fruits that you don't have available. Yeah, in that case, the Centrone kit can be useful. All the little cafe, they just don't have as many different fruits and products. Then, hi Ida, can you kindly confirm your last sensory course for two? Which is it the training kit you're thinking about? For the sensory training kit, it's the last time we will send it is this July. So if you want to have that, you have to buy it before the end of July. And then we will send it in the beginning of August, so you can train from August. How would you go about training body? For body, we usually use something called xanthan gum. It's like a thickener, so if you can blend it with water, and then it's almost tasteless, and then you can just make the water becoming thicker and thicker. So that could be one way. I have also in some of my courses used milk with different fat percentages, and then I have mixed it with the cocoa powder, so that they became more, or they ended up tasting more of the same. So it was like a cocoa milk, but just with different fat percentages. And then I'm asking my students to try to rank them from low to high intensity. You can also take filtered coffee versus espresso if you just want to give them the quick explanation of the difference. But yes, I'm really trying to emphasize that it's just how thick is it. And then I tell them to take a sip and then roll their tongue through the liquid in their mouth. Hello, Ida. I'm Taufan from Indonesia. Hi, Taufan. How do I practice about intensity of bitterness? What material can I use? That is actually something that's included in the training kit. There you will get 4 different concentrations of caffeine that you just have to mix with water, and then you can taste different intensities. If you want to do it by yourself, caffeine is what we are using. Sometimes it can be difficult to find. You can use tonic water that contains quinine. I think also in some pharmacies you might be able to buy quinine. And that is actually a little bit easier for some people than caffeine because we have more receptors for quinine than caffeine. So it's not a bad solution either. And then, yeah, otherwise you could use like tonic water or grapefruit or a very bitter coffee. Yeah. Yeah, I think actually coffee is not a bad idea either, to just take either different roast degrees or stronger brewing. And then what you can do is to put on a nose clip, so you are not disturbed by the aroma, but only focus on the bitter taste. Yeah, and then how about over extracted tea is is bitter, or the problem with over extracted tea is that it will be both bitter and astringent. I use it actually to illustrate astringency, like this really mouth drying sensation. So depending on what you tell them to focus on, it's just important that they understand the difference. But it will be both very bitter and very astringent. Which water specification did you use for the test? We followed the recommendation from SCA. How can we improve sensitiveness of such as bitter, papery medicine in water solution like flavor active kit? I would say just train on it. I have used the flavor active a little, but not so much. But I think that it's really awesome that you can put it into water and actually taste it retronasally. You can also mix it with coffee, which is also nice, so you get closer to the real experience. But yeah, the sensitiveness, it would be maybe to make the dilution lower and lower. So you can even make it like a threshold test of papery. So mix a little bit, or make the 1 liter solution of the papery, and then dilute that, so you have a range from going from very little papery to more and more, and then you can try to see at how little can you detect it. Maybe that could be helpful. Hi Ida, sorry to ask again, but I'm trying to buy the kit now using discount code, but when I scan the picture on the screen, I don't get any discount code. I think you will receive an email with it, but otherwise, please send me an email. Then I will be sure to answer it immediately after this. Yeah, and I cannot see your name. You're just here as anonymous. So just please, or send me a message directly. So then I will help you out for sure. I'm happy to hear that you're interested. So, mm, mm. Yes, I think that was all the questions. Perfect. Thanks. Oh, and then here we have just one last. I can see, how often should I train and calibrate my sensory skills? To train, like, of course, as often as possible. But what we saw is that it's better to train a little over a longer time than to train a lot over a short time. So if you can get it into like really just being a habit, you work with coffee, so we are all training every day, but just really every time you get a chance, put words on, try to discuss it with colleagues, and actually also before you discuss it with colleagues, if you are tasting a coffee, write down what you taste and then compare it afterwards, because it's so much more fun to see that you have written the same on the paper than one says something and then you will also be able to taste it. That will also be my recommendation. And calibrate, it will be every time that you are doing something with your colleagues, can be nice, or someone that you are going to taste with. Do a small calibration session beforehand. Hey, thanks for this webinar. When copying, do you use coffees with similar roast dates? Yes, if we do, in general, like when we do research, we have to be so sure that the only thing we vary between the coffees are the question of interest. So yes, they would be roasted on the same dates. But again, it depends on your question when you do the copying. But if you want to compare the flavor profile, it's good as they are so similar as possible in any other aspects. Okay, Nicholas is writing me, for your information, there's one code in the email, Introduction to Sensory and Roasting, e-learning course. Use the coupon code e-learning to get the promised e-learning course. Well, all right. It doesn't see. Okay, if any of you are interested in buying anything, please send me an email and I will help you out to be sure that you will get the discount. Maybe it has run out, the discount code, since it was created for World of Coffee. I will check up on that. And sorry about the inconvenience. You will, of course, get the discount. All right, but thank you so much for all your questions and for being here. Please reach out if anything else comes up. And then I hope to see you again for the next webinar in 2 weeks. Have a very good evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are in your time zone. Thank you.